going, but it was videotaped. You got to watch it.
Invite everyone to take a seat, and we welcome you to a very historic joint session with the Ojai City Council and the Ojai Unified School District Board. I think this is maybe the second time in history that we've gotten together, so this is really kind of exciting. We're glad that you're all here. We invite you to speak. This is as much about getting public input as hearing from ourselves. There are blue cards in the back. You can fill those out and bring them forward either to the city officials or to Cathy Smith, who's sitting in the front row. And we'll make sure that we get those cards up here and that you are included in the conversation. We'd like to begin now by turning the time over to the City Council for the roll call.
Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Shelley Griffin. Here. Michael Shanahan. Here. Kevin Ruff. Here. Jane Weil. Thane Whipple.
Here.
Mayor Johnston.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina.
Here.
Councilmember Wyrick.
Here.
Councilmember Haney.
Here.
Councilmember Blatz.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum of the City Council.
And a quorum of the school board. All attending, if you'd like to stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. We are asking for approval of the agenda, and I think we'll do this in two parts. One, the school board, and then the city council. For the school board,
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous.
Okay, and for the city agenda, any additions?
Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion second, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any objection? No? No objections.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. We're right on time. This may be the last time tonight that we are, but we're excited about that. We'd like to begin with some comments from Dr. Morse, our superintendent of the Ojai Unified School District, and she'll go over kind of the history of what got us to this point in terms of hearing the proposal.
Right. Thank you. I'd like to thank our city council members for being here tonight, Mr. Vega, our school board, and all of our members of the audience. I'll begin with a history that started before I was here, so I'm going to read parts of this because I don't know it from heart. But in 2008, the most recent process of looking at the district office property began. That was, if you remember, during the financial crisis, and so we opened the process and then chose not to move forward at that time. In 2011, the school board reconvened something called the 711 Committee, which is a committee that forms to look at if the district office property can be declared surplus, which is required before it can be sold or leased. The 711 committee met, ultimately declaring the property surplus, which allowed the district to explore options for lease or sale. The school board decided against the sale of the property and therefore began to explore options for leasing. The process for leasing began with offering it to legally required public agencies, and none applied to lease the property. The school board then requested a waiver from the State Board of Education that allowed the school board to have a request for proposal process rather than accepting the highest bidder in a lease process. So that RFP process allows the school board to select the most beneficial bidder in the process. The school board opened the RFP process on December 14th, 2018. They received 3 RFPs by the close of the process on February 15th, 2019. 2 of those proposals were rejected because they didn't cover the costs of moving off of the property, which are estimated to be between $2 million and $2.5 million. The third proposal has not been accepted or rejected by the school board, but they wanted input from the city council members and from the community, which brings us to tonight's meeting. Tonight's meeting is an opportunity for the school board and for the city council to hear from the potential developers, for the city members of the community to ask questions, to raise concerns. Tonight's proposal is limited specifically to the scope of the proposal, and so there are many questions you may have that might not be addressed tonight because this is one step in many further steps of the process. For example, where will our schools go? Where will the district office go? Those have not been addressed yet because the school board thought it was prudent to not expend taxpayer money on asking staff to develop those plans if this proposal is not going to be accepted. So if this proposal is accepted, those will be part of the next steps. The process for tonight is that we will hear from the Playground Agency, and they will give a brief overview of their proposal. We will open the process for public comments and questions. We will hear comments and questions from both the City Council and the school board members. We will take a brief break, and then there will be closing statements made by the Playground Agency, the City Council, the school board, and then we will adjourn all within the next hour and a half. And with that, I would like to introduce Christine Schnell, Creative Director from Playground Agency, for her presentation.
And just to facilitate this, I'm going to turn my chair over to Christine, and I'll watch from somewhere where I can see.
This is like a 1 minute.
I know, they're going to introduce.
Hello.
They are going to bring Brian in.
Hi, I'm Christine Schnell. I'm the principal of Playground Agency. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm not used to it quite. Is this better?
You can pull it closer. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. I'm not quite used to this level of formality, so you'll have to bear with me as I do my best on this. I believe there should be a... Sure, and I know there's a clicker as well. I might have...
Did you notice?
Thank you so much.
Her and Brian at the same time? 7:10.
So first of all, thank you so much for being here this evening. This is something that we're very excited to share with you. And I also just want to thank the City Council and the school board for making this part of a public process. Playground is a design-driven development firm that really focuses on community-centric development. So this is exactly the right first step, in my opinion, for this type of project and for this type of proposal. So, hello. Let's get started.
I have one question here. I
Oh,
was
sure.
looking at the sequence. This isn't for you, Christine, but I guess for Thane. According to I think the agenda here, it started out, it seemed like Brian Akins was going to sort of set the stage. This seems like I don't know if that's a conscious decision to do it, to reverse it.
We actually have a slide for historic that he helped facilitate some of the photos for, so I was thinking maybe he could jump in at that point, if that's agreeable to you, Brian.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
We'll get to him just right away. So all things with love, we have this slide up here because we are a heart-driven business. Everything that we do at Playground is community-centric and driven by true personal passion. There's nothing that we do that is purely financial or purely out of context. I think everything that Playground stands for is about working in collaboration with others and working in collaboration with the community to develop exceptional spaces that are human-centric. So that's at the core of what we do. I'm also a well-certified professional, which is, if you're familiar with LEED, it's the flip side of LEED. It's about human-centric spaces that are healthy environments for people, also healthy environments for our planet, which I don't think should be that radical of a concept, frankly, that we have buildings and spaces that are healthy for people and planet. So that's a core mission of what we do at Playground, is creating those healthy spaces. So at this point, we have some historic images that the Ojai Valley Museum was kind enough to provide for us, and just setting the stage for this project and setting context for it. And certainly I'm not the best person to do that. Brian is our guy to describe to us the history of this property. So if you would please, it'd be great to hear.
Apologies to having my back to the audience behind me. My name is Brian Akins. I'm the chair of the City of Ojai Historic Preservation Commission. I am also a longtime board member of the Ojai Valley Museum. I just want to take a few minutes running through the educational facilities of the Ojai Valley over the last 150 years. To help visualize the latest facilities, I have 10 posters that are on the back wall behind us. The following information is taken from the Ojai Valley and Illustrated History Ojai Museum Edition and the Phase 1 Historic Resource Inventory for the Nordhoff Grammar School, now City of Ojai Landmark number 24. As early as 1869, a school was established by pioneers at the bottom of the grade leading to the upper Ojai. They served students living in the Matilaha and upper and lower Ojai valleys. They opened the school with 12 students. By the early 1870s, plans were made to establish the first public school in the town of Nordhoff. The oblong brick schoolhouse, completed in 1876, consisted of one classroom and two anterooms. Today, it is known as the Lavender Inn, City Landmark number 14. In 1895, the trustees of Nordhoff School District authorized construction of the two-story wood-framed Nordhoff Grammar School at the corner of Montgomery Street and East Ojai Avenue. That's not up there yet, but it's on the back wall there. The school featured a square bay window tower on the two corners. Let's see. Two corners of the facade, a rounded front entry, a square pillared bell tower. Actually, we're talking about this one here. And one-story assembly hall in the rear. The building housed four classrooms. No, we're not. Assembly hall, sorry. Long day. Recitation room, principal's office, and lavatory. As of 1909, the community's need for a high school found a home on the second story of the Nordhoff Grammar School. A recollection provided by Nordhoff High School's first principal, Walter W. Bristol, indicated that in 1909 there were 24 high school students, and the grammar school boasted 75 pupils. After a fire destroyed much of the original Western-style downtown Nordhoff in 1917, Edward Libby helped design, finance, and build a new downtown in Spanish Revival architecture. Utilizing his connections among influential townspeople, including Sherman Thatcher and Walter Bristol, Libby reinvented the downtown area into a cohesive whole. The projects included a Spanish-style arcade along the main street, a bell tower reminiscent of the famous campanile of the Basilica Minor de San Francisco de Asís in Havana, Cuba, and a pergola opposite the arcade. On July 19, 1918, Matilaha Grammar School merged with Nordhoff Grammar School, which prompted the Nordhoff Union Grammar School District to be established. By 1927, prominent Santa Paula architect Roy C. Wilson, who also designed Nordhoff Union High School, now Matilaha Junior High School, and the San Antonio School Building, was commissioned to design a new Spanish Revival-style grammar school on the grounds. And that's the building you see straight in front of me in the bottom middle portion, as well as other parts of it, other views of it. The first 8 rooms of the new building were completed in 1927. A three-classroom addition was added in 1929. The 3-classroom addition was completed before the recorded move-in date of 1929. After completion of the new school, the kindergarten class moved to the southwest corner of the building from its previous classroom in the women's club. Full disclosure, my father-in-law was one of those kindergartners. An Ojai Unified School District binder listed Nordhoff Grammar School as Chaparral School High with an address of 414 East Ojai Avenue in 1949. The school's large auditorium was added in 1937-38 to replace the aging auditorium, in addition to the top right building coming forward to the street. According to the board minutes, according to board minutes dated May 13th, 1934, Roy C. Wilson suggested the school acquire works progress funds for a kitchen, cafeteria, auditorium addition. The plan was stated as action must be taken by having the old building condemned if there was no other way. That's that first building. A lot of people miss it. A lot of people never saw it. Correspondence mentioned expected state approval of 3 classroom additions, rooms 11, 12, and 13. Just to note that those numbers are still on the classrooms. Nice touch that the school has maintained over the years. Wilson suggested combining the contract for both demolition of the present wooden structure and the proposed new construction. The auditorium was completed on July 7th, 1938 at a whopping cost of $25,817.55. 55 cents. According to an unsigned contract between the Nordhoff Union Elementary School District and Harry O. Varnado and W.A. Blue of Ojai, dated July 16, 1938, the latter agreed to demolish the original 1895 two-story school building for $200. Wow. Demolition was accomplished by September 1st, 1938. I think we could do a GoFundMe to pay more than that nowadays. Mm-hmm. Specification for a frame and plaster storage and bus barn for the Nordhoff Union Grammar School were released in August 1838, in case you were wondering how old that was. Preparations began on July 1st, 1939 to move the 43 enrolled kindergarten students to rooms 4 and 5 in September, in order to prepare the southwest corner of the school for use as the Nordhoff Grammar School office. A discussion between Roy Wilson and the Nordhoff Union Elementary School dated March 19, 1941 indicates the beginning plans for a kindergarten building for the Nordhoff Union Elementary School District. Requirements for the kindergarten building included 2,000 square feet of floor area with boys and girls restrooms, shower, and dressing room. However, during the 1944-1945 school year, overcrowding required the school to lease space in the women's club for kindergarten students. I know David Mason told me he went to kindergarten there. I'm pretty sure my father-in-law did many years before that. The women's club continued to be used to house kindergarten pupils, students, and during the 1947-1948 school year, a 6th grade class also met there. According to architectural renditions prepared by architect Maynard Linden of Los Angeles, dating to June 10, 1952, renovations focused on architectural, structural, mechanical, and electrical rehabilitation to the oldest portions of the school, which included classrooms, completed on September 9, 1953, plus completion of the double kindergarten building and the district office building on October 27, 1953. Interior improvements were made at classrooms in the south and north wings of the building, plus the alcove, entry, passageway, vestibule, exit hall, girls, boys, men's toilets, waiting room, secretaries, nurses, principal's office. A lot of work. Nordhoff Union School District, and I think you're all in them still today. Nordhoff Union School District and Nordhoff Union High School District merged in July 1st, 1966, which resulted in the establishment of the Ojai Unified School District. The Ojai Unified School District closed in 1976, and the building was converted to the Ojai Unified School District offices that same year. As of 1999, the property held the Ojai Unified School District offices, hosted special education courses, and special functions by the Chaparral High School and Topa Topa Kindergarten. Thank you.
Gosh, thank you, Brian. I'm glad I did not have to try to do all that. That was fantastic. So as you can see, this property is extremely rooted in the history of Ojai. The context for this property and for any proposed project to happen here must be site-specific, must be sensitive to this history. And there's a lot of that we have to show you this evening. So I'm excited to get to that. But I think having the context and really setting the stage for what this property means and the history that's led us to this point is very important. One of the things that our firm focuses on are these very sensitive, historic properties that might need some reinvigorating to get people to get it more utilized for people now. So I guess without further ado, I'd just like to introduce my two partners who are also here tonight and an integral part of this project. Brad Schnell, who's my husband, and conveniently also my business partner. And then we have Brianvite and his lovely wife, Jane, who's here tonight too. So I don't know if you guys want to say a few words. This is not a one-person show, so.
My name is Brianvite. I'm here with my wife, Jane. We live in San Francisco right now, but just a little quick background on myself. The thing I'm proudest of is my parents were both high school teachers. My dad used to teach at Morse High in San Diego. They're both retired now, both still alive. He's 88. He's doing great. I studied civil engineering as an undergrad and structural engineering as a grad, and I am still a licensed civil engineer, but I had the good fortune to work with a fund for a while, and we developed a lot of really thoughtful, community-centric developments focused mainly around solving the problem of where people put their head at night. And so that means apartments, single-family residential type developments, setting aside open space with lots of community facilities, and over 20 hotels. And I am a former planning commissioner for El Dorado County, so I've seen a lot of, we ushered in a new general plan, so I've seen a lot of planning in my brief 51 years on this planet. And I'm super excited and thankful to be here. Thank you.
And I am Bradley Schnell. Started Playground with Christine several years ago. I try to remember that. And I have the great privilege to work with her. We've built a design firm really focused around everything that she's already introduced. But I'm going to leave it to you for now.
Oh,
for now.
I'll do my best. Okay, well, let's see. So magical moments. This is something that we look for in all of our projects. We're very focused on creating environments that are, as I said before, that are human-centric. There's a lot of properties in the world that are beautiful, that photograph nicely, and that are really not about people. And for us, it's nothing without people. It's creating spaces where you can have a conversation, where you can have fun together, where there's opportunities for interaction. And I think that's what makes Ojai so special and so different from other communities, is that there are spaces here that invite that interaction, that where you actually get to know the people around you. I lived in Ojai for a good portion of this summer, had the great good fortune to be here, would love to be here full time, so if anyone's selling a house, talk to me afterwards, please. I'm looking. But what was amazing about it, just being here for the better part of a summer, is that I got to know people more intimately here than I had in other cities that I've lived in across California. And that was an amazing experience, to run down the pathway and see people I knew who actually asked how I was, who knew my dog, the pizza people who would bring me pizza when I was up working on this. Just having people who know you, who care about you. And as I was living here for the better half of the summer on my own, Brad would be here sometimes, and it felt very safe, very protective, and like it's a community that really looks out for each other. And I think that's something that is important when you're designing spaces, is that creating a place for people. And that's really at the heart of what every project we do is about. So magical moments, have to have those. So the program elements, just so we get down to the part that everyone's probably interested in, we see 4 major buckets. In fact, we also have 4 mason jars just outside the doors where we have a little informal voting system. Have to have it. If you are interested in voting, each person, I'm not sure who's done it correctly or who's cheated so far, each person is supposedly getting 4 chips. You can put all 4 of them in one jar if you want. You can distribute them equally across 4 jars. It's your call. But if you vote for us on the way out, just give us your tally. It'd be helpful to see where everyone's head is at. But the 4 buckets that we've laid out are residential housing, which I think is an important bucket that we have to talk about. We have a wellness-focused hospitality component. We also have parking, desperately needed in downtown Ojai, as I'm sure most of you are well aware of. And then we have a town center. So let me get into all of these just a little bit more. So for residential housing, we imagine a variety of housing types. We see live-work lofts for artists being part of this typography. I think there's a lot of amazing art that's happening in Ojai. and creative work that's happening here. And I think this type of living arrangement can be fantastic for artists in particular. I've lived in this type of setup myself before and found it to be fantastic for being able to show art in a reasonable way and also have a place to live that is economically affordable. So I think that's an important component. We're also looking at housing for families, which I think is incredibly important, especially when we talk about a community. Children are the lifeblood of a community. So making appropriate family housing is an incredible priority. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about affordable housing here too. I know that's a statewide mandate, and it's very hard to afford to live in California. And I think that's something that we all need to address as a community head on how we make it affordable for young people and people who work in service industries and in creative industries to live in these towns. And that's what makes places like this so great. So I think those are all the buckets that we want to talk about tonight and also hear feedback on in terms of what you feel would be appropriate here in Ojai. Oh, one other thing to note, with all of this housing, we'll talk about it a little bit more in the parking portion of this, but I think one of the things I've heard from a lot of you in just some informal meetings over coffee is that traffic in and out of town is a major problem here. And one of the things I think you do when you build housing that is affordable for the majority of people that live here or that work here is that you take cars off the street because people aren't commuting in and day out. And I think that's an important consideration, is how Ojai runs. Where does the workforce live that works here and that serves this community? So I think that's an important thing to come back around to and talk a little bit more about. Wellness hospitality. This is an essential component for helping to fund some of the affordable housing and other housing initiatives that we're proposing. We're looking at capitalizing on what Ojai already has as creative capital here, as a wellness center, and as really a sustainable example for the rest of the country. So I envision this as including not only a hotel component, but also having facilities for community events, for lectures, for educational opportunities. So I think that fits nicely with having an educational side to it as well. Given that it is the site of a school, it seems fitting in many ways. So that's one of the things that I think is a core component as well. Parking. So I know this is a hot topic. From the conversations I've had, parking is really quite an issue in the downtown core of Ojai. I've experienced it myself personally, and I think there are a few things that we'd like to see with the parking component. To me, I think it's an excellent opportunity for solar, for a park-like parking setting where it feels more like a walk in a park than a giant asphalt jungle, which no one wants. I see bike parking as an integral part of that, pedestrian pathways and bike pathways as a large part of that, secured bike parking, really encouraging people to get around Ojai in the way that Ojai is best experienced, on foot and on bike. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us there to have really great community amenity for that. And did I say electric vehicle charging? We need more of that here, for sure. Finding a spot to charge is challenging. Town center. This is my favorite part of the proposal because there's so much opportunity here, especially with this particular location right in the heart of Ojai. I think it's an amazing opportunity to create more community space. And so when we talk about that, there's a few buckets within the town center that I envision for it. We see local retail and dining. Another part of the town center is a garden component. I think an educational garden and a working garden would be fantastic to have here, especially servicing a restaurant or cafe. Really fantastic. Just seeing how food is grown and where food comes from, I think, is incredibly important. Great education, great to appreciate the culinary arts. We also see a public piazza, a fountain, beautiful public restrooms, because who doesn't want that? I feel like that's just a nice to have, even though it seems silly to bring it up. It's an important component. And we also see, of course, public art. I actually have an art degree, so I'm passionate about public art, excited to talk with all of you a little bit more about that and see how we can integrate that from the very beginning. I hate to see like the plastered on last thought of public art. I think it's something that we have to talk about early on and get that right. And then I think the other thing that, just to touch back on what Brian shared with us tonight, is that this is a historic property. And so having a living history, having educational components, especially along the front arcade, incredibly important. It adds to not only the experience and the education of people who are here, but also people who may visit here to appreciate that history. So I think all of those components are what I see for the town square and what I get excited about. But again, that's just my thought on it. I'd love to hear from all of you, and we'll turn it over to you here in just a moment. Actually, before I turn it over to you guys, I think I'm going to turn it back over to my husband, who is the architect behind all this, to just walk us through the site plan a little bit, those different buckets. Actually, if you want this.
No. Well, that's fine.
You might want it. So you just hold down on this and it becomes a laser pointer, I think, the top one.
So I also apologize for presenting to my back. But, I think just to start, we look at this as an opportunity to preserve and restore an amazing asset, which is this historic structure, which has been modified many times, but still, in my opinion, and I think this is shared with the council and also the Historic Commission, is that while it may not classify as a national landmark, it is a landmark for Ojai. And so, in summary, to start, we see preserving the front facade of Ojai Avenue as being sort of the paramount, most important aspect to this reconstruction. And then we see opportunities throughout the site to integrate many of these aspects that Christina's already sort of touched on. Starting from the top, we see a garden here where we could, where the chefs from restaurants around town could use to produce organic fruits and vegetables. We see a public piazza and really a whole open space that is, as Christine said, park-like parking that has pathways throughout the site, but a piazza that would sort of interface here with the existing skate park and park and ride, as well as the bus stop where that's located. Wellness center and hospitality, we see that sort of happening throughout the site, but focused right here where there's some existing structures already. Let's see, so live, work, arts, lofts. So I think this is, again, something, and I will remind you all that this is very conceptual. I think what we're looking for here is input across the board. We have these 4 buckets of program that we think fit very nicely here within the context and the scale of what is already existing. But we really are looking for input and feedback on all of these ideas. We see the front facade being an amazing opportunity for a restaurant, a cafe, some possible local retail, also integrating bike parking throughout. And I've kind of been through the list here. Oh, yes, wait, and so then to sort of add to that, what we imagine is some contextual housing to go along the lines adjacent to where the housing already is. So really sort of meeting the context of the site with its surroundings and also using the historical structure as sort of a centerpiece of the redevelopment.
Would you mind so if the front is
like retail and possible restaurants. Then you have the center, which to me looks like tennis courts, because that's.
Oh, so those are solar panels on the roofs.
The hotel?
So yeah, on the hotel as well as all the other structures that we could safely conceal. We don't want to have giant solar arrays that people are going to be staring at, but the thought being is that if we can integrate solar roofs as much as possible, that would go a long ways in terms of being carbon neutral.
And then the housing at the top.
That's correct.
And then over here by the skate park.
We see this as a potential opportunity for mixed use. Could be we see it as kind of a yet to be determined, but an opportunity.
Where's the parking?
So we have parking all up here, along here, and then right now what we imagine would be the hotel entrance. Valet would be here with valet parking.
This parking is all surface level?
Well, I think this is one of the things that.
Repeat the question, please.
It was a question about where would the parking be, and I think that is ultimately the question of the economics and how it would all come together.
Right. I think the thing to remember is that these are very preliminary sketches. It's just something to go off of as we start this community process. So all of this is very preliminary in nature, but it's so much easier to design collaboratively when you have a jumping off point. So I think that's where we're at tonight, is a jumping off point for discussion.
Can you clarify, the existing structures will remain
Sure.
and be converted to?
Sure.
There's no demolition of existing structures, just to be clear?
So to be clear, I guess I could use the pointer, but I'm here. So this and the auditorium building, historic, absolutely must remain. There's no way that these are coming down. Just need to be restored. And I think that's going to be fantastic. Another part that you'll see here in just a moment in our sketch of this is a plan to restore that historic bell tower too, which I think will be a very nice complement to the post office tower. Now here, we're looking at a few options. Mind you, we haven't done any due diligence on this property yet, so there's still many unknowns, both for you as a community as well as for us. And I think the state of the buildings is still an unknown in terms of the structural integrity, in terms of the materials, in terms of making them safe when we're doing any reconstruction. So I think that to me is a question mark as to what's currently existing there. So that's a part of the exploration process that we'll be on. Oh, no. Okay, sorry. I want to dig in with you, but we'll wait. Sure, one more sketch for you. So this is just our quick sketch of the historic bell tower restored. This is really the prime portion of the building and the site, in my opinion. This is the part that has all of the history rooted in it. And it's also a first impression in many ways. So I think for this, it's incredibly important that we have very accessible bike parking, pathways, a community piazza that is accessible for picnicking, for community events. That's what we envision the frontage of this site. The setbacks of the building are such that it really opens itself up to a community space. And so it's still obviously in draft format at the moment, but this is what we would anticipate it looking like, more or less, is going back into those historic records and figuring out how to restore that bell tower to its former glory. So that's the sketch I have for you. I have a few more things, and then I'll let it be turned over to questions and comments. Have one more rendering here. I think we still have a little bit of work to do to get those tiles just perfect, but we're maybe on the right track with that. There's a lot of great historic images that are a wealth of information here. And then get involved. So tonight, this evening, this is a bit more formal than how we typically run a preliminary workshop to get community feedback. So I know I'll hear from a lot of you here in just a moment, but I'd like to also invite you, if you have time or interest, to join us on October 3rd we'll be hosting a community workshop to really actually get hands-on in workshopping these very preliminary ideas. So if you can make it, we'd be delighted to have you. We'll have more cookies, more coffee, and lots of big ideas. So come prepared to get your hands dirty, get started on this. And then last but not least, if you're not a workshop person or you're not someone who likes to speak in front of a group, I totally get that. I don't particularly love it myself. But please, if you have comments, if you have ideas, if you have stories to share about this building, send them to me. I would really appreciate it. Or call me. Be happy to meet with you. I don't really have enough business cards at the moment, so I thought I would just put this up on screen. So if you have any ideas, suggestions, advice, comments, really appreciate. Nothing is ever wasted on this. So I guess without further ado, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Such a pleasure.
Great. Thank you very much to Christine and the Playground Group and Brian for your contribution as well. I just kind of wanted to, before the public comments, to quickly kind of set expectations about the process, and I think Tiffany started that really well. As she mentioned, we received proposals. This was the only proposal that we continued consideration of. No decision has been made as to whether we're going to go forward with this or not. A big reason for this meeting, and let me just also clarify that while we did receive some written proposal materials, no one has seen this before. This is the first time for all of us. So it's exciting night for that. But just to let you know, the point of the meeting tonight was really to get first impressions from our community, the city council, and school board members, so we can determine what comes next. Do we continue consideration? Do we continue negotiation? Do we take some sort of action? That's what we're formulating tonight. So having said that, we would open, and to give you an idea of the schedule, what we had in mind was for the public to come forward with comments. You can also ask questions, but I know I've lived in Ojai a little over 20 years now, and if we just did a question answer, we'd be here till a week from Thursday. But what I'd like you to do is feel free to ask questions. There'll be a time at the end when Christine will have an opportunity to respond to those questions from you and also members of the council and the school board. And then we'll just have some wrap-up thoughts from members of the city council and from the school board. So without further ado, we'd like to open it up to the community, and I think we have a couple of cards here. Is this? I'm sure there are more cards out there if you want to bring them forward, but we have a few to get started with. Russell Sidney. And this, there's a timer, and then the mayor and myself can have some discretion, I think, or we don't have a gong. I was thinking that would be a good idea, but anyway, we'll
you're welcome to be as indiscreet as you like. But
we can give Cathy the look.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. I
I'm
really
sorry,
appreciate
Russell,
that.
your time is up. But sorry.
You're just too used to that, Johnny.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
He says that because I come before the council regularly to speak about the climate crisis emergency and the urgent need for us to be able to reduce our greenhouse gas production in this community. So I'm really excited about the ideas being put forward and see them as a solid basis for us to move in that direction. I'd like to point out a few things. One is to do with the bicycles, and that campus is actually the location for a former bicycle right-of-way that allowed people, would currently allow people to get from the Ojai Valley Trail up into downtown and onto Aliso. So if that route could be provided, it's very challenging for bicycles to deal with Ojai Avenue safely, given the speed and the traffic concentration. So the light at Fox is a very important place for bicycles to be able to cross and get into the north part of the community. I have other comments about bicycles, but good on you, I don't need to do them. So I feel good about that. But the issue being that in this town, well over 40% of the trips could be replaced by bicycles, and that becomes a significant source of greenhouse gas reduction. Electric vehicle charging is a very important concern for me. I'm part of the group called the EV Advocates. We do the EV showcases around here. And not only in terms of providing a benefit for the people on site, but also a benefit for the community at large, which is hopefully going to grow very rapidly. Reducing commutes is another issue. And the affordable housing on site is particularly one way that we can do that, provided it actually ends up in the hands of people who work for the community. I would encourage the school board to consider that it might well be a way to provide housing for the staff that comes on at entry-level salaries that are going to be very challenged to live in Ojai at the level of remuneration that most schools can afford. So it could be a way to extend the budgetary resources of the school district to retain and attract staff, is to have that affordable housing specifically oriented towards that. The other thing that Councilmember Wyrick brought up in previous review of this property was the issue of reducing commutes through the use of video conferencing and virtual meeting capacities that would allow the people who live here and have to commute to long distances or take a lot of trips, business trips, could then forego a large amount of that, and all of that is accountable for a lot of the greenhouse gases produced in this valley. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
5 seconds to go.
Very good. All right. Peggy Lacera.
That an RFP had gone out. My name is Peggy Lacera, and I do consulting for Aubrey Ball, who's the co-owner of the Sane Living Center and co-owner of Hip Vegan. And Aubrey has been talking. I personally have a passion for developing Ojai as an eco-education tourist economy. I think that that's what the world needs. I think that we have an incredible amount of talent here. And we're a healing community, and eco-education means an organism in the environment. It's not just the environment. The environment gets talked about as if it's somehow divorced from humans and other life forms that live in it, but it's a bi-directional energetic exchange between the organisms and the environment. And Ojai is unique in that we have more healers per capita, did you know this, than any other city in the country. And we have this enormous wealth of talent that are at the cutting edge of regenerative agriculture, creation of permaculture swales, food forests. Anyway, so your proposal was lovely, and it's everything. It's like a town within a town. Our idea was that, and Aubrey's passion is wellness and self-healing. An organism in a healthy environment, eating healthy food is optimal. And he feels that any project undertaken at the Chaparral site must be generally beneficial and economically successful for the entire town. It has to stimulate business for our merchants, restaurateurs, hoteliers. It has to generate a healthy revenue for the city, and it has to provide good paying jobs for our citizens. Aubrey and his collaborators have a vision for the Ojai Chaparral site to create a world center for educating individuals, groups, and corporations into to cultivate optimal wellness in themselves, their communities, businesses, and the environment. The venture that they're envisioning is poised to take advantage of a dramatic, imminent transition in healthcare in the United States. Our current healthcare system is, in actuality, an illness care system, one that's exorbitantly expensive, tragically ineffective, and ultimately unsustainable. In the upcoming decade, healthcare will inevitably transition to a system based on personal responsibility, nutritional education, movement, living in alignment with nature. And Ojai can be an incubator for this kind of impending renaissance in healthcare and wellness with the creation of such a center at this Chaparral site. It would be an economic wellspring for our community. It would be like an Esalen Institute, an Omega Institute, or 1440. It would provide ongoing seasonal schedules of short-term programs, 5-day, 2-day programs, which would serve to increase visitors to Ojai throughout the week. It would be a global destination. It would make Ojai a global destination for health and wellness and cultivation of a regenerative environment. It would increase the cultural vibrancy of the city and spark additional new enterprises in Ojai. The natural evolutionarily sound basis for the educational programming of the center would support local efforts to transition to regenerative agriculture and improve local soil, air, water, and water quality.
You're getting close to the end.
In summary,
there.
the development of the Chaparral site as a world center for optimal wellness would cultivate and nurture all aspects of Ojai life and further align our city with international, environmental, and world health goals. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Aubrey
We can't have
Balkin.
them flying here.
What?
Flying is going to be a nightmare.
You have investors for that?
And it's more tourist space.
I know.
Everything be.
Hello. So Peggy started a little bit, just to look at it from a slightly different way. This is sort of like an Esalen like of the South. In other words, it's a place you go for 5 days or two days in the weekend. We specifically wanted that because we have a real problem in Ojai in that the number. Oh, I'm Aubrey Ball. Sorry. I live in Ojai.
Through the chair, if we can send your questions up here, thank you.
You're the
yeah.
owner of the Sane Center, right?
Right, so I'm the owner of the Sane Center, and
Aubrey, you can
Okay.
speak to the group
Sure.
up here, and all we ask is when people come up to make a comment to introduce themselves and then say whatever they'd like to say.
So trying to solve the problem of such a big difference between the number of people in Ojai during the week and the number of people on the weekends. This kind of operation would be people could come for 5 days and leave, and usually those courses are lower priced than the ones on the weekend. The other is that it's a continuing education system, and so it's not a normal education system, because things are changing so rapidly that education itself will change rapidly. And the other thing about this focus on health is that basically, for example, in diabetes is now $1.7 trillion a year. That is more than the whole education system of the United States of America, from kindergarten through college. People have realized now that the reason we're sick is that our lifestyle does not fit the way we can stay healthy. Part of it is most of it is the food, but how you move, the meditation, and the whole string of stuff. So we're actually looking here to actually not necessarily, we actually talking about using this as a user. Self-healing, self-health, self-immune system. So our bodies just heal themselves. The same with plants. The same with the soil, the same with the climate. That whole system, nature, actually works to heal everything around it, unless it's messed up by humans. So we're trying to move away from that. And Ojai is a great place for that to happen because it innately has that. It has one of the best nature preserves itself. And we've been moving away from nature in terms of our lifestyles. But Ojai is the place to bring you back. You just need to take a walk in the mountains and you decide, you know, this is right and this is wrong and this is important and this is not important. You just know it.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
Oh,
if you have
sorry.
One thought. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Ray Powers and then Steve Weed on deck. And the lights are right there in front of you, so it's...
The race car lights. Hello, everyone. I'm Ray Powers. I'm a resident of Ojai. I'm also on the Planning Commission representing myself tonight. I didn't have anything prepared. I wanted to hear what the presentation was. A few questions come up that maybe you can address. One is, how many people do you see actually living there as residents? Two, how large is the hotel? How many people are in the hotel? I understand you want people who live there to be able to park and then ride their bike or walk to work. And I'm curious if that's totally offset by the number of cars coming to visit a hotel on the weekend, and if that doesn't really balance out. Many of you know, especially the council, that one of my passions is natural building and green building, and a lot of the science and peer group reviews around the environmental hazards of modern day building and press board and everything buildings are made of. And I really would not like to see conventional builds go into this that actually create more opportunity for cancer and other kinds of health issues that are directly related to people who are living in their homes. And so often with affordable housings, honestly, they're kind of done on the cheap. And there are, you know, green modular homes these days and other ways to build. We've talked about pilot projects on our Sustainability and Resilience Committee of the Planning Commission regarding pilot projects with straw bale and monolithic adobe and other natural kinds of building materials that give you better R factor, that give a better living experience, because we spend a lot of time in our homes. So that's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So Steve Weed and then Cathy Nolan on deck.
You ever thought about announcing for the Dodgers or something? So it's good to be here. I'm going to make it as short as I can. I want to echo two concerns that I have, and I realize this is completely preliminary. And I liked what I saw, but you know, a lot to go before I make any mind up on my own. Echoing Ray, the parking that you build, is it absorbed by the new residents or new tourists coming to Ojai? We've defined ourselves primarily as a tourist community. Parking has to be addressed, and not on a, it has to be addressed on a net positive, so we gain parking. The second thing that I have a concern about, got to get my teleprompter up here, has to do with defining affordability. That really has to be addressed. Is it affordable because it's below the poverty level, or is it affordable that a middle-class person can meet? I don't know. Key issue. Having said that, Friday I was up at the environmental strike in the middle of town, saw some of you there, and if anyone heard me speak there, they totally know that environmental causes are really, really important. And I support all of the things that are going to be said about that. But what it really comes down to me is that we're talking about a property management issue that's designed to be compatible with the city, but to benefit the school district. Okay, that's the way I'm framing this issue. And I don't care if we grow poppies at Chaparral. I don't care what we do with that property. I would strongly encourage everyone here, especially those on the city council, to support whatever the school board decides to go. And you've already seen from the demonstration that they're not going to put some sort of 19-story high-rise there. You know that's not going to fly. So I would really encourage you to totally support whatever concept it finally becomes. Not only is the school district one of the largest employees in the city, but it has its own vibe that it contributes to the Ojai Valley. And that takes me to my final point. The school board and the administration is considering floating another maintenance and operation budget. If that comes to pass, we need to strongly support that. Schools are part of what fuels our economy. They are part of our identity. And we need to get support working together. William is the only one that I have seen in a school board meeting since the last joint meeting. Excuse me, that's extremely disappointing to me. Okay, and now I'm kind of channeling that lovely Swedish girl who gets...
You're on a good roll. You're on a good roll, but the light saved you, I think.
No, it saved you.
Yeah, right.
No, you gotta act as a community. You really do. I'm out.
And in fairness, Randy was there the other night.
And he counts for two.
Thank you. My name is Cathy Nolan. I'm a longtime resident of the Ojai Valley. I'm a landscape architect, and I'm a planning commissioner for the city of Ojai. And I'm up here to generally say there's a lot that you presented tonight that I'm in agreement with, and I know it's very schematic at this point, and you're just kind of at the beginning developing a program, so there were a lot of things up there. But I just made some notes as you were giving your presentation, and they're not necessarily in any particular order. But number one, and this is my opinion, I do chair the Complete Streets Committee for the City of Ojai, which is all about what happens on the streets for everyone, making them safe and accessible. And in my opinion, I'm not going to say this is for the Planning Commission or the Complete Streets, my personal opinion, I don't think we're desperate for parking. In 38 years of living in the Valley, I have never gone to town and have never not found a parking space. Anyway, and I do promote biking, but I'll get to that down the road. So I would like to lower it. Yeah, is that better?
And Dale, you're up next.
I just would like to say, don't make it a car-centric, and it didn't look like you were going to, but I would just like to emphasize, make it a people-centric project location. I'm definitely open to housing and some affordable housing, whether or a combination of affordable by design or affordable due to income levels. I'm also open to a workforce or some work-live, which you brought up. And I also, I know Russell brought this up earlier and a couple other people mentioned it, but that potentially some of the housing could be available to the school district and staff, which I think is a great idea. I love the town center. I love that it could be a community oriented with possibly a conference area, but also the community gardens, park-like, public art, possibly even a public pool. It's something that has come up over and over. I know it's water. I know that's an issue in our community, but I think it would could potentially well serve the community. Definitely maintain the historic architecture and the connection to downtown. Keep the skate park. Great with the solar on the roofs. Yes to green and sustainable buildings and outdoor spaces. And I believe I heard, I think it was your husband say something about carbon neutral. So the more that you can do that, I'm absolutely on board. Russell City had mentioned that access for bikes. We're really pushing a bike community. It will cut down on traffic and parking. Keep that in mind. And so generally, I'm in favor of your project, kind of a mixed use, public space, housing, retail, and park space. I'd love it to be a win-win-win for everybody in our community. Thank you so much for being here.
Great, thank you very much. So Dale Hansen and then Carol Smith.
Yes, I'm Dale Hansen, and I live in the city of Ojai, and I've been here for a long time. I so appreciate your presentation, and one of the things that I really liked is when you had low-income housing. And I don't know if this is true, but I have read and I have heard that there's something like, I'm not sure the right number, but something like 160 children in the Ojai Valley School District live in their cars. And so if that's true, we really need to address that. And I don't know how true that is, but I've read it and I've heard it. So I think that also I agree very much with what Ray Powers was saying about alternative building materials and with what Cathy was saying. And I won't repeat everything, but I'm with you, Christine. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. So Carol Smith and then Nick Ojai up next.
Good evening. I'm Carol Smith. I have lived in Ojai since '78. What to me makes sense is that Ojai Unified needs children. Our district, every time we lose a child or we don't have that child, it's either $8,000 in ADA that goes by the wayside. We need to grow our district. The way to grow our district is basically to have garden apartments on the back side, which are open to, let's say, employees of Ojai Valley Inn right now, whose 3 children now go to Oxnard Unified. If they can get a garden apartment on that site, they would have 3 little ones who would then go to Ojai Unified. We must think of growing our school district and attracting families who work in Ojai, whose children now go to Oxnard, who would be very happy to get an affordable garden apartment and not crowd the roads on 33 and have their children benefit from our wonderful school district. So to me, nobody's mentioned that, but we need children. We need children desperately in our unified school district. We have a terrific school district. I mean, it's wonderful. We need more kids. So whatever you do, think in terms of affordable housing for workers who now commute to the inn or other jobs, and their kids go to Oxnard or Ventura, and they should be going to our district. I can't emphasize it enough. The hotel, I think, in the front or other businesses is wonderful. They could have valet parking, and they can find a spot wherever. Parking, to me, is a non-issue. I lived in New York City. Believe me, we have terrific parking. So that, to me, is the absolute lowest denominator. We need children to make our district strong. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So Nick Ojai and then John Davis.
Thank you. My name's Nick Ojai. I'm a local architect. Since I was a student at Berkeley Architecture School 50 years ago, I've been looking at the school district site. Congratulations on working with the school district, or as far as you've gone. And I'll say very little tonight, maybe more later. I'd like to have a cup of coffee with you, Christine, if you are up for it. But you mentioned several buckets. I'm sorry that there was so much put on parking. I would have chosen another word. I would have chosen a word like movement. How do humans move themselves? From bed to breakfast to work to, and what makes a town? What movements make a town really pull together? Another, when I look at the downtown Ojai, I think of site repair. I think of this school district site as being probably the most significant site in the next 100 years of the movement of people living in Ojai. That's enough. Thanks.
Thank you. So John Davis and then Barbara Bowman.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to burden you with 2 architects in a row. I just want people to understand that this is a mixed-use commercial development. It includes an upscale hotel, a retail mall with restaurants, a housing development, and surface parking. This is a money-centric scheme. It's not a people-centric scheme. People, we have to see beyond the mood boards. Thank you.
Very concise.
Okay, so Barbara Bowman, welcome, and then Judy Nelson up next.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I find the project is very interesting because they've covered almost all the areas that need to be covered. I mean, they covered the parking, they've covered affordable housing, they've covered, they even talked about classrooms, which are important, where people could have these conventions, but you need a hotel. If you want to be a world-class center that brings people for economic development and sustainability, you have to have a hotel to house them to have the conventions. So they've covered it, and that hotel is very important because what the hotel is going to do is sustain the entire project. How do you pay the gardeners? How do you pay the people that maintain the project, that maintain the affordable housing? If you don't have a cash flow, there is nothing to sustain it, and the only thing that would sustain it would be a hotel. And the fact that it almost looks like a hacienda when you look at it in a square like that, if you went from the sky looking down, you would be looking at like a park, because it looks to me like they're creating the parking so that it looks like a park, which is very important so you don't have an asphalt flat surface. So wherever a car pulls up, they get out and they can look at green, and someone walking through it, they're walking through green. May it be a bike parking or may it be a car parking. But they've really covered the areas, and the most important one is sustaining the whole thing. You have to have cash flow. Without a hotel to have a cash flow, not all the ideas in the world could be built and none of them would sustain themselves. So I congratulate you on that and making it a community center. I mean, it's a community center that will be supported by a hotel. Very well done. Thank you.
Judy Nelson, and then Julie Hahn.
Good evening. Thank you. It's great to see two boards here together. I love that. Thank you. I have two very simple questions. Where will the OUSD administrative and adult education and the nursery school be relocated if this were to come past?
We'll answer questions later, but the short answer is we have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned about that.
We have some idea.
Okay. That's very concerning. As a teacher, I'm very concerned about the impact of this on the Ojai Unified School District.
But we would not move forward until we had concrete.
Okay,
plan.
excellent, excellent. And I'm concerned about the egress and ingress of the hotel on Montgomery Street, right across from the Saint Center. It is a street that has a serious problem with speeders coming from Ojai Avenue, speeding to the stop sign there. It's a very difficult and dangerous left turn from Matilaha onto Montgomery Street. So I'd like to see some traffic mitigation there. I'd also, because of the hotel and community center access, I'd like to see more traffic mitigation on Ojai Avenue, the crosswalks. Thank you.
All right, so Julie Hahn and then Chris Hilgers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Julie Hahn, and I have lived in Ojai for 5 years. And I have to say that I'm very excited about the new energy that has come into Ojai. And Tiffany, I want to thank you for your 4 values of inclusivity, environment, wellness, and creativity. And Christine, it was a wonderful presentation, but I want to just say that my experience in this town has been quite complex to change. People do not embrace change easily. But one of the things that the City Council did that I'm very impressed with is that you signed an MOU with Cheryl Dahl. And Cheryl Dahl is a world-class facilitator of new ideas and innovation. And I hate to get caught up in the minute details in a presentation that says, this is an idea. I want to embrace Ojai. I want to hear from all of you. I want to hear your vision. What are your values? And what is your vision? And I think it's been hard in this community for me to see and understand what the vision is. This is a very, very special place. And again, I want to go back to the 4 values of inclusivity, creativity, environment, and wellness, because that has resonated throughout this plan, this proposal, and many of the things that have been spoken by people tonight. We are all passionate about this community. This is a special parcel. And that it has one proposal after 5 years is really an indication of the complexities that we're up against. But the way forward is a process. And I think we need to be innovative in how we embrace that process forward. Thank you.
And then while Chris is coming up, if anyone else would like to speak, now's the time to fill out a card and bring it up.
Chris Hilgers, 704 Park Road. This is a monumental decision, in my opinion, for everybody in Ojai. This is a prime piece of property that's been here a long time, and it's really the center point of the town. And certainly at the risk of not hurting anybody's feelings or do anything, but I think all possibilities should be explored. This is an interim gathering to get information to decide what we want to do. Certainly one of the things I've thought of is that, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but maybe is there any possibility Ventura Unified is interested in taking the district over for economy of scale to save enough money to take the property and use it for school uses or an auditorium or something that's better? Or are there some bonding companies in the state that would be interested in financing to keep our school district going the way it is? And I just think that there are a lot of smart people here, and we haven't investigated all the possibilities that are potentially available. Thanks.
Great. What we'd like to do now is take any comments or questions. These are preliminary comments or questions from the City Council and School Board. If we could just go around, I think starting with Randy and
Ryan, maybe. Yeah, Ryan.
Oh, Ryan, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Ryan, I haven't been to a school board meeting or a city council meeting in a long time.
That's all right, babe.
So
No worries.
We'll start with Ryan.
I appreciate you not calling me Paul.
And what is wrong with that?
Nothing, Jim. No big deal.
But before you start, just we'll ask our questions, then we'll take a 10-minute break, then we'll come back for Christine to respond and for us to have final statements.
Can I ask, do we actually need the break?
What?
Excuse me?
No, we're good.
What did she say?
Do we really need the break?
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think
Yeah.
if we're going to get out of here
Why
by
don't
9.
Why don't we press on then? Go ahead.
Well, I think that the simple answer to what questions I have are there's too many for right now. I mean, this is a very preliminary plan. It's not worth going through every different question I have at this point. We had a proposal that doesn't explain how many units are there, how big the hotel is, what exactly a lot of these things mean in scope and scale. We're not on a consensus as far as parking and traffic and how those things will be affected here. And I want us to make sure that we all understand that if this property is going to be developed in a multi-use, complicated complex, we are in an economy in Ojai that has multiple vacant buildings in our economic corridor. We have multiple businesses that are not filled. Adding all of this at once to the community is going to be difficult because we don't have the population to sustain a lot of this. I think it's a bit of a pipe dream looking at all these things and saying, hey, we can definitely do it just these specific ways. I think in an optimal situation, we'd be able to do all that. But I think some of it's going to be very, very difficult, and we're going to have to take a long look because ultimately it not being successful is the biggest fear. That would be the biggest problem is if we change this property so significantly, and it ends up being a blight on our community because we can't fill it and can't do anything right. The public spaces might be amazing, but if we can't do it right with residential housing, if we can't do it right with affordable housing, we can't do it right with hospitality, it's going to be difficult. So I think we need to look at all those things and make sure we're balancing the economic viability of this as well. And I think a lot of those questions are going to have to get developed. So.
Yeah,
so I have a tendency to repeat back a lot of the thoughts that I heard out there, and I have met with quite a few of you, and you're thoughtful, you're considerate, and I see your vision. The one that pops to my mind is this Essalon, this vision of creating something that's special and unique. Just that word in itself, and the fact that my wife teaches at the Essalon up north, and what that means to people to go to a center of that magnitude and to be a part of the change that does on a huge basis. So that word, just first time Aubrey said it to me, I just agreed. I just agreed 100% with it. So another word that came out was, it was just said, it's a special parcel. It's the heart of our community. It's everything that we are. And I don't disagree with what Ryan just said about all the complexities and how thoughtful we have to be. But at this stage, I think that's what we have to be. We have to be open, we've got to be thoughtful, we've got to be careful, we've got to be considerate of one another. We're not all going to agree, we're not all going to see the same thing, but it's ours. And I think that's the most important thing that I've heard tonight. It is ours. And I've met with Christina, a wonderful woman. Her husband seems to be a very, very nice, warm man. With their partners, they fit here in Ojai. So I had reservations about the process. I'll be honest with you. I didn't know how you went from 3 to 1, but I'm not going to dwell on that. What I'm going to dwell on is the fact that the person that you chose, the company that you chose, seems to fit this community. So I'm going to stand behind her. I am going to support her, and I'm going to support the community as we move forward.
I'm going to echo my colleagues' comments. This is just a start tonight, and there's no point, I'm looking forward to the workshop. I think it's a wonderful idea for us to dig further into things, and I think this is all sort of a get our minds aligned first event, and I really think that there's a sense that the people that have been brought in here are and welcome to the community, and you have the same. You seem to have congruent sensibilities with the community, and that's a great start. I would just ask that we allow ourselves to think boldly and broadly. We're a little over a century since this community reinvented itself in a very bold and broad way, and we treasure that now, looking back. And one of the things that I've always been going back and forth on is how much of this is and I know I'm probably going to make the mayor nervous talking about this a little bit, but traditional applicant, review process, and how much of it should be a collaborative process between the city and the school board. The city council and the school board, and the city and the school system. Because I think there's advantages, but also problems in thinking more broadly about a collaborative process, and I think the comments about process are extremely important. And I'll give you a little example. I think vision that engages the community attracts resources. So let's just throw out let's throw out a possible vision here. Would a collaboration that included restoring that stream course as an amenity and the adjacent Miller property, what we always have been calling that, allowing more expansive programming maybe have more of a benefit increment than the cost increment also with the added benefit of maybe attracting this community to want to put resources in through some vehicle, rather than just looking at it as a typical private front-end investment type of process. Could collaboration allow lowering the cost of the school boards for some of their relocation issues, in addition of benefits to the city in some ways, as well as programming that would have more leverage in terms of attracting students to the school system, as well as being able to leverage reducing commuting costs or commuting activity in this community, which is, by the way, the highest in the county. We have the highest percentage of people don't live here in the entire county. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is my mind's by no means made up, but I think we need to challenge ourselves as a community to think broadly and boldly, and maybe not be constrained by a particular traditional model of development. And then one last question: what are your thoughts on the Chaparral School repurposing? The Chaparral Auditorium. I didn't hear anything about that. So I'll end with a specific question.
Yeah, let's wait. That'll be better. There'll be more.
Is it my turn? So I echo the concerns that were expressed by the members of the community. I listened very carefully, and as well as I'm feel aligned with the comments made by my colleagues, especially the concept of Esalen. And not only thinking, what was the word, broadly and boldly, but long-term. As architect Nick Ojai brought out, this should be like a 100-year vision. We should be looking at everything through the lens of climate change, rapid change. Society is rapidly changing. Education, conventional education is changing. It's hard to keep up. But that's our job, to have a long-term vision and really look at how this property will impact the city of Ojai and the surrounding area for the next 100 years. I especially want to move away from being dependent on short-term tourists, the ones that come in and out. That's why I like the idea of education-based, ecological and health education-based tourism. I think that resonates with what what Ojai is internationally known for. Then my other question is this, and it could be answered by the school board, is the idea that we're going to go through this process with the only client that you're considering before any decision is made. They're going to be investing their time. That's my understanding, right? There's going to be thorough community vetting and time to answer questions before any decision is made. That's the plan?
My understanding is they're trying to take the pulse of the community to decide whether or not they invest the time and the money.
Okay. All right. I look forward to the October 3rd meeting. Thank you.
Thank you and good night. Oh, no, that was for Susan, okay. I would like to emphasize what was just said about the importance of this parcel, and it is not the largest parcel in the world, but it's the largest parcel we have in the downtown area by far, and it will be the most significant imprint that we leave on this community with a multitude of problems. I agree with Carol's comment regarding what we really need is a population in the school for children, and they have to have families and a place to live. That's a conflict we've got to work out, because part of what's going on here, as I understand it, there's an overlay zone on the school property which is for housing in order to address that, which will then have to be spread someplace else in the community where we have very little place to spread it to. I agree with Mr. Davis's comment about dollar-centric. And I don't say that in a negative way. I'm a former real estate broker, housing builder, and developer in many of my past lives, as well as a city manager and a city planner. And when I have great sympathy for the school district trying to figure out how to balance a budget under the circumstances they are now faced with a shrinking population. They need, I'll use the term, a cash cow. They don't need capital that they will get by selling the property. And so how does one get a cash cow where more than one or two investors, one being the owner of the property of the school district, another being these folks who come up to propose something, everybody's got to make some money to make it work. And on top of that, we have to have, quote, affordable housing. Basically, I see this as a major dilemma on two fronts. One on the financial front, which is I hear lots of good ideas and everybody's for it that are nonprofit. And then I see what the school district needs, which is they have to have profit to make this worth their while. Just since I've been dealing with this over the last 3 or 4 years, the cost went up from less than $1 million to, I think I heard the number, if I heard it correctly, something like $2 million plus to relocate. That's before anything gets done. Somebody's got to put that money up. So the audience I'm speaking to are these good folks that are interested in the pulse of the community. You aren't going to be able to come up with a couple of $1 million there and then address the traffic signalization and the other issues that are going to be undoubtedly required. Even if we don't have parking, we're still going to have traffic control. Those are all, as a developer, those are all heavy burdens that get placed on a project like this to be carried by 7 acres. To me, I didn't hear much about the hotel, but as somebody said, that is, I think Steve Wheat said, that's the money engine. And I think one of the gentlemen that spoke that's interested in the project, part of their business is building hotels. I've met with hotel developers for the city who want to put in 150 rooms there. So when you put all that together, what that shouts to me is general plan for the city that has not been looked at for many, many years, and the city council will be addressing that in October. So in order to answer the question both of the school district and for the developers and our planning office to be able to answer the questions, what is the zoning on that property going to be, and how are we going to go about it? The first 3 elements of the city general plan that have to be addressed, the public safety element, the traffic element, the parking element, the housing element, which takes us beyond 3, those all have to be somehow worked out and balanced. I think it would be great, from what I heard here tonight, that if we could do something like that and meet everybody's needs. Frankly, I don't know how it pencils out, and somebody'd have to show me that at a workshop of how one can make that financially viable and still have enough money to satisfy all the needs of the community, primarily the school district. So anyway, I'll shut up. It's your turn.
Great. I think I'll have a lot more questions for the playground group later on, but I'll tell you the questions that I'm asking myself. And I think that's instructive and will be helpful, and maybe members of the playground group can include that. But as has been mentioned, this would be a major change to downtown Ojai. And it seems to me that it would be a very positive thing. It'd be a beautiful part. I think I'm kind of torn because on the one hand, I'm a member of the school board. On the other hand, I'm a member of the community, or I feel like I am. And you are. Well, thanks. I appreciate that's official from the mayor. But I love Ojai. That's why we moved here. I think it's a wonderful place. I think often when we think about what we love, we think about what we imagine in our heads rather than maybe what it is. We don't think about the gaps between the restaurants here and the restaurants there, or the shops here and the shops there. We just, in our minds, we kind of fill in those gaps. you know, but I think there are those gaps, and I think one of them is this area. And so as a member of the community, I would love to see something beautiful there that attracts people. As a member of the community, I don't particularly think running big school buses in and out of the middle of town is the greatest thing in the world. I think, you know, even if there were a few more smaller cars, it'd be preferable to big buses going in and out every day. The school board's used to me arguing against myself. So now as a member of the school board, we need to really consider where can we move these facilities, what can we do that's in the best interest of the students, and how do we make this work so at the end of the day, if we embark on this project, that over the course of the next 100 years, our students are served better than they currently are. And so those are the questions I'm asking myself as we move forward. I'm really grateful that the city council is here and that we can all, and that you're here. And the comments have been great that we can consider these questions together.
Thank you, Thane. We've had multiple discussions on this property in a public session, so I'm not going to repeat myself. A couple of things that stood out to me from the comments. One of the reasons that we were attracted to this group is the comments of how they fit into the community, and some of the other projects were hotel only, which we didn't feel was what the community would want. It also wasn't a price point that worked for us. And so I get back to what I think Barbara Bowman was saying, was that the point of this property, of us looking for a lease for this property, is to help the budget and the students and the teacher salaries for our future, because we recognize that we're going to possibly be up and down because of Prop 13, which, by the way, might be coming up for, so when you see the fake news about Prop 13, it's not going to up your property tax. They're looking to change property tax on businesses. So please, if you can contact your representatives on Prop 13 changes, those are positive changes for our school district. But I felt the thing that I liked about this project so far was that it was taking those, it was a compromise. It's not just a hotel, it's not just housing, it's not it's a compromise of all these things. It's opportunities for us to meet as a community in a property. Yes, tourists. Yes, some education. I'm not sure these comments about the echelon, which I don't really know enough about, but ecological and education-based tourism is still tourism. You're still bringing people in and out. So there was a conflict there in my mind. You're talking about people seem to be down on the hotel, but you're still bringing people in, even if you're bringing them in for education. So I think we need to consider that.
They stay a month.
That's about it. I mean, I know we'll have future discussions, but I think the reason we haven't heard specifics on, 12 hotel rooms and 12 houses is because, again, to look into the board discussing the prices that we need, the income that we need to help the school operate, and then also the viability the group needs to discuss with the Planning Commission and with the City Council so that they're willing to compromise. I think if they come up with numbers, maybe that's a starting point, but from what I hear, it sounds like they're flexible, and so that's why they didn't, my understanding of why they didn't present specifics.
So just a little context is that we don't get an opportunity to talk about these issues unless the issues come up formally. And this issue, while it may look to the community like, well, how can it be that it, it's almost like a hostage exchange, we don't know yet until you know, but that's kind of the nature of what this is. And I guess I take this moment to tell you, the community, where I am on this, which is I'm very torn. One, you should know that when the school board, or at least speaking for myself, we decided we weren't going to sell the property. And I think, that's sort of, as a headline, that's something that's appealing to someone who's a fiduciary over something as important as this property. Well, we're not going to sell it. But the reality is that a development on this property encompassing as much infrastructure and expense as would potentially, go in, and would definitely go in if we were to do a project, it's a 100-year lease. Is that selling it? Is that, when is it going to come back to the district? Not certainly in a very, very, very long time. And so I look at then, so we're giving up this property, practically speaking, forever. And what are we getting back? And so far, the numbers don't look all that impressive to me. Maybe, it's $200,000-$300,000 a year on a budget that's almost $30 million. So this process is important, and all these, everyone has a real say in it, because while we own the property and we are fiduciaries to the school district and to the students and are obligated to do the best we can for them, the city controls ultimately the use of that property. And the city, as they said, they have an overlay for housing on it. So if we didn't, even if we didn't want to, we are bound together in this enterprise. So I'm all ears. I've met with different among you over the years on this property. We all, I think, if nothing else, we have to realize that whatever major change occurs on this property will change Ojai forever. You aren't going to drive by that little funky, hardly used seemingly place that, to some extent, from my perspective, is kind of cool that it's not all that intensely used. That's all I got.
Thank you. Yeah, this is really preliminary. I think what we've heard tonight is a conceptual presentation. I think one of the dangers of what we heard tonight is it's a grab bag of, everything everybody wanted, and I think we can pretty much guarantee that ain't going to happen. So, I get a little bit worried about saying we're going to have this, we're going to have that, we're going to have this, we're going to have that, we're going to have everything, right? We're not, right? And so this process is going to be to refine this concept down to the essentials of what we need, right? And I think there's some opportunities here that we would be remiss in overlooking, right? I do believe there are opportunities to revitalize the commercial corridor in downtown. I think there are opportunities to provide a facility platform for other opportunities. I love the idea of Esalen, but my thinking for the hotel property is that it needs to be a sort of a neutral platform, right, for the community to come in, whether they want to do Esalen type stuff, if you want to do sustainability workshops, whatever, right? I don't want to narrow it down to one particular thing because I see it as a community asset. Same thing with the accessibility of the property, and this is one thing that I'm very pleased with the playground group. I've had conversations with them. What I do not want to see is a walled off property. This is the wrong place for that. And so to my mind, any kind of design is going to need to incorporate people permeability at the edges, right? Because I like the idea of the center, and I like the idea of the community, whatever, courtyard thing. Piazza. Yeah. So I like that kind of stuff, right? I was not in favor of a plan that sort of put a fence around it, made it 100% housing, and closed it off from the downtown. It's the wrong location for that. But I think a number of things can happen. So yes, it is a heritage property, and yes, we owe it to the community and the history of this community not to disrupt it. But I think in terms of as an analog for the district, we need to honor the past and we need to look toward the future. And I think some of that is building out the infrastructure. We've lost people in this town, and with those people have gone families. So I do think that the housing component is very important, as well as Ms. Bowman said, the commercial heart of it, which generates the revenue. And I'm hoping that we can find a way to use that property either for our own employees or for some affordable level. I do think that's something that I'd like to see more about. So I think what we can count on is that some of this stuff is going to fall away. It's either not going to be economically viable or the combination isn't going to work. But some of it, I think enough of this may stick. We'll see, right? I mean, we're all just kind of looking as we go. And in my own mind, no decisions have been made at this point.
So I'll bring up the rear and finish this off. I'm very grateful to all of you for showing up and expressing your opinions, because that's what I was here to hear, is how the community saw this project, what things. I was really happy to hear other people agree that parking isn't always an issue in Ojai, or at least not our biggest issue. I live in the downtown area, and so I walk this area a lot. And I feel that the campus gets used a lot by everyone on the campus, but what a great opportunity we have to, I'm getting feedback, to allow more community members to know that campus, to have access to that property, that we don't see anybody interacting with it right now. So I look forward to that. One of my concerns is I enjoy the idea of Esalen type facility there. My concern is that creating these huge ideas and projects raises all the rest of our property values and thereby kicks more families out of Ojai. Even if we designate some of the property as affordable housing, I wonder how many people we are also pushing away. So that's one of the things that I would be asking the community to help me understand. And I'm looking forward to the workshop to vet this further. I think there's a lot of discussion to be had still.
Thank you. So, Kristen, if you'd like to go up and, yep, or here is fine.
Cool, thanks. So I can
Yeah, feel free to address the comments that have been made.
Okay, well, thank you so much for all of the thoughtful comments, the questions. I'll do my best to answer and address them as succinctly as possible. Again, it's all very early on, so I may not have answers for everything, but let's just dive in. So one thing I thought was really important that came up was building materials, building with human health in mind, with environmental health in mind. And just a short story about me is that I actually, as a designer and someone who builds spaces, suffered from toxic mold poisoning caused by a building with water damage to it. So I totally get how important healthy environments are for people. It totally changed my life. It changed my practice. That's why I became well certified. Health and wellness has always been a passion of mine, but that transformed it from something that was an interest to something that was a mandate in how we do business. And so I bring a lot of those principles to the table, a lot of that background, that understanding of that the place people live, work, sleep, play, it matters. And I take it very seriously and very personally when we talk about the finances of a project. Of course, we are not a nonprofit. Everything must be financially sustainable, but this is all about people. I would argue against anyone who would say otherwise for that. This is about people. This is about creating amazing community spaces and also healthy spaces. So that's something I'm absolutely passionate about. I'm glad that the green building materials and especially around affordable housing, so important that those issues are appropriately addressed, and I can ensure that that will happen with this project. Sorry, it's an emotionally charged subject for me, so I just wanted to get that addressed straight away. In terms of parking, I think there's a lot of interesting discussion to be had around parking, around bike pathways, around pedestrian pathways, and how we use the site. that accommodates all of the needs of the community there. I think that's something that should be on the forefront of what we dig into at this upcoming community workshop. There's just more information needed to make sure that we are getting this right. In terms of employee housing and family-friendly housing, we are playground, so we're good at the idea of creating spaces. We can build an awesome playground for kids here and for families in these housing areas that we've set aside. So I think that's a great priority. In fact, we've also spoken with the school board about potentially having employee housing, which I know is another issue that came up. Again, that's not fully baked yet, not fully figured out, but that is a conversation that we're having actively in figuring out if there's a way to provide housing for teachers and members of the school. In terms of the auditorium from Councilmember Wyrick, that's an amazing historic asset. For that, we envision restoring it as with the rest of the property frontage. I think it'd be a great community event space. There's so many opportunities there. We've also spoken with several locals who have strong feelings about what could potentially be there, and I think there's talk of culinary education happening there in conjunction with community-centric events. So that to me is exciting. I'm trying to think if there's more stuff. I know there must be more.
Well, I think we'll,
I hope that helps.
Going forward, I think, assuming that we continue the conversation, there'll be plenty of opportunities.
I think you're right.
To discuss that. So why don't we, in the interest of time, why don't we go around one more time for final thoughts? And then I will adjourn for the night.
Yeah. I can make that real simple. I don't have anything else.
Okay.
You know, I just want to clarify the word echelon or echelon. You have to understand that it's a large think tank. It's a large environment with very progressive thinking and actions that take place in it. So when you think of that, don't think of it that it has to be a space that's just this humongous, incredible, visionary temple. That's not what it is. What makes Esalen what it is the people that actually go there and think there and act there and take it from there and bring it back to the community. So I think we need to understand that so that we don't get caught up in thinking that we're going to create this temple in the middle of Ojai and it's going to solve all of our worldly problems. It's not.
I think it's important to, in the visioning that we're going to go through as a community, to look at a direction of supporting primary employment. In other words, people who have jobs here that can work here, and not necessarily just based on expanding the visitor economy further. And that's one of the things we're going to have to think through about this very, very, very carefully. I would also want to reiterate that I really believe that the trend in the world right now, at the state and globally, is collaboration attracts more resources than not collaborating. For example, a new state law that I think is going to get signed by the governor allows the redirection and enhancement of local property tax revenue specifically for housing development. The MOU that was referenced that we have with Cheryl Dahl with a group called Flip Labs is a person who has global reach, as grew out of our collaboration with Carnegie Mellon University, and I'm hoping that there's a way of having, the city can put that resource into collaboration on this issue to some degree. In other words, I think that there are ways that we can address the school district's needs in a much more community beneficial way by collaboration and leveraging resources that we can access together that are going to be difficult for either agency to access singly. Thank you.
Okay, I was just reminded that 2 years ago, almost around this time of year, Councilmember Wyrick and I did arrange for a community kind of a visioning meeting at the Arts Center. And some of the ideas that were expressed there were expressed tonight. And I also want to, is this right?
It's working.
Okay, okay. I want to make clear that my priority would be, is housing. I would not want anything else, to take away from that, whatever housing we can afford. And when I say housing, I imagine something that fits into the plan that you showed. And I forgot to say how much I do like what I saw. I just kept wondering, what's the catch? And can you really do this? I was thinking, wow, this is so good. It's too good to be true. So I hope you don't mind that, all our questions. Let's see what else. I think that's all. I think I'm looking forward. Can you clarify what time and where the October 3rd meeting is? Is that already?
We have it tentatively scheduled from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the interest of hopefully.
From 5 to 7.
We
Sorry.
don't have the location firmed up yet. We do have an email sign-up sheet for anyone interested. We'll be sending that out shortly.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if everyone heard that, but she said from 5 to 7. The location has not been determined yet, so that will be, there is a sign up in the back if you want to put your email address down, and they'll notify you. And I'm sure it'll be in the paper and on Ojai Hub once that's determined.
I imagine we could.
And OUSD Facebook.
I imagine we can put it on both of our websites also.
Yeah.
If this is going to be have any chance to be a successful collaboration, I think it's clear that this has got to be profit-driven in some fashion. It's not, many of these ideas that I'm hearing from the audience and that we hold on the city council and have been expressed by the school board are really subsidized and nonprofit. So we need to set that aside, and it seems to me that the first obligation of the city council is to deal with the general plan so that everybody else knows what the rules are and what they can expect if we hope to get an investment in the town, this kind of an investment. But I think it's an obligation of both the developer and the school district, for the school district to say what you need, precisely how much down and how much a month forever for the 100 years, and then some idea of how out of 7.5 acres with trees and, all of the good stuff that we've told you we like, how you can get a bank to loan you some money to do it. And then maybe the last question that we'll all have to ask ourselves, if it doesn't work, who holds the sack in the end? So anyway, that's where my mind runs, guys, particularly as an investor.
Right. I'd kind of like to continue some of those thoughts from the mayor that the reason that there is only one proposal that we're looking at tonight is because there was only one proposal that came anywhere close to meeting the financial needs of the district. And those numbers aren't in concrete yet. We're at a point where we're saying, what does everybody think? If it seems like a good idea, then let's firm up the numbers. This is a multi-year drama to get to this point. And while you say, well, we're not really anywhere yet, believe me, it took a lot of pain over a lot of years even to get to nowhere. And I've
been in the play for 45 of those years. We move very slowly here in Ojai, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately.
Yeah. I think another point to that, and I'm speaking personally, not officially for the board, but having gone through that whole process, I think it's highly unlikely that the school board is going to go through that process again. So I do hope that we're able to work collaboratively with the city to try to figure out what great thing we can do downtown with this really impressive playground group. But if we don't get it done, my feeling is nothing is going to happen on that property for many, many years perhaps many generations. And so this is that window in time. We have the people lined up. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work, but I don't see us ever coming in. I don't see us coming in this room, maybe our children or grandchildren, but I don't see us coming in this room again to talk about a different proposal.
I'm sure that's true.
I wasn't going to say anything, but that's kind of sad. Because that property does need help. It needs to be beautiful, and we really can't afford to do more than maintain.
It's $1 million to fix it up and make it habitable.
So, that's all.
Just a little more context. Thane said that the reason this is the proposal we're dealing with is this is the only one that where the numbers made sense. And to be clear, we're just talking about the preliminary numbers in terms of what would the developer be willing to give the district up front to fund what we would need to do to get off that property. So that became the non-starter. The other proposals weren't even offering enough in that first blush to even begin the idea that we could get off the property. So beyond that, in terms of the 100 years and how that would work and whether it would include percentage rent based on how much revenue is being generated, all that stuff is, nothing has been discussed or negotiated. There were proposals, but we've never gone back on that. So gone back in terms of negotiating. I don't agree necessarily that this is the one and final chance. I don't know why it would be. It's a great property in the center of town, and I think people will always be interested in doing something with it. And this, assembled group of elected officials will, term out and otherwise move along, and who knows what will happen. So I don't see this as necessarily the only and great moment. I think we will all do our best.
I guess the one thing I want to sort of revisit is this concept that, we are doing this for the money, right? I mean, bottom line, this is about money. It's about revenue for the district. It's about financial support for the students, right? Having said that, I think the board has demonstrated that, we have a very strong concern in maintaining a compatible development. I mean, one of the, in my own mind, primary purposes of not selling the property was to retain some control over what would happen on that property, knowing that whatever it is going to last for a long time. So I don't think any of us were of a mind to just say to a developer, here it is, buy it, do what you want, right? Fight with them. We see a role for us in maintaining the integrity of the parcel in the community itself. I think that we have an opportunity to build a community resource. I think we have an opportunity to potentially develop a revenue stream for students. But I agree with what's been said. This is a step-by-step journey, and the second step is not presupposed until we get through the first step, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I thank you all for showing up. I beg you to stay involved in this process. The only way it will succeed is if all three legs of the stool are here, you, the council, and the board. We got to make it happen that way, or it's not going to happen. So please stay engaged. Please give us your best thoughts. And I thank you for showing up tonight.
I totally agree with you, and want to say the same, that we would love to hear not just collectively your input, but please reach out to any of us, send us emails, let us know. I really am looking forward to the discussion, not just of what this could be, but how a project with all these different components really affects the broader community. Because while we are looking for a cash cow, it's more than that. I really think that it also involves the question of, are we bringing more families into Ojai? Are we making a community where families can live, or are we pushing families out through a project like this? It's not going to do us any good to have a cash cow if we really don't have kids to educate. So it's all those pieces of this that flow out into the community that I'd like to hear more discussion on as well.
Thanks. Anything else? All right. A big thank you to everyone who made tonight possible. And we'd like to adjourn the meeting. And one comment, we do have a closed session of the school board scheduled for now. So we love you all, and you don't have to go home, but we'd rather you not stay here.